Welcome. Thank you for tuning into Stories of Adventure. Join me today as we explore the Joust. Cheers erupted from the crowd as Sir Conrad knocked another knight off his horse. The annual jousting tournament was entering its last leg, and Sir Conrad was on track to win the tournament for a third year in a row. He lifted his visor and led his horse in front of the crowd, raising his lance above his head to celebrate his victory. The crowd cheered louder than before, drowning out the sound of the other knights storming out of the arena. Many were cheering because they put money on Sir Conrad's victory. He wore a grand smile, basking in the cheers of the crowd. He was a knight of the people, but that didn't mean he wasn't enjoying their praise. He rode his horse to the entrance of the arena, handing his steed off to Clayton, his stable boy, before retiring to his tent. Each of the knights participating in the tournament were given tents to rest in between matches. These tents had the essentials any knight would need: beds, armor stands, racks for their swords and lances, and a simple chest for personal belongings. Sir Conrad took off his helmet, and a couple of squires unhooked his armor, allowing the air to flow around his body again. The final match of the tournament would take place in a few hours, and Sir Conrad had needed some rest before the match. He sat in his tent, eating and drinking, replenishing his strength. Suddenly, the tent flaps flew open, and Sir Conrad's king, King Oswin, stepped in. Sir Conrad quickly knelt on the ground. King Oswin was a larger man. By his size, you could tell he took any opportunity he had to celebrate with wine and meat. He had a large beard that was starting to gray, and hair around his mouth was stained red from all the wine he had drank. He wore a thick coat that fell all the way to the ground, hiding his feet as he walked. "Sir Conrad, there is no need for this. We are not in the throne room, and I am here to congratulate you on your victory." King Oswin leaned towards Sir Conrad, helping him to his feet, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I wish all the knights of my kingdom would aspire to be valiant and strong as you are." "Thank you for your kind words, my king." Sir Conrad stood there, trying to hide his excitement from his victory. He was thrilled that the king would come here to congratulate him about making it to the finals. Sir Conrad expected this to happen, but not until after he won the tournament. King Oswin took a seat on the bed. "Are you prepared for the final match? I heard that Sir Reginald has advanced to the finals. The other kings believe that in a year or two he will be evenly matched with you, but they don't foresee you losing this year." "I am glad to hear my abilities are recognized and they have confidence in me." King Oswin sat up straight on the bed. Sir Conrad could see he wanted to say something, but whatever it wasn't easy to say. "My king, I can tell something is distressing you. Please tell me what you need to say." King Oswin leaned forward and whispered so no one else could hear. "I need you to throw the match." Sir Conrad's eyes spread wide and his mouth hung open. He did not know what to say. Years of training went into reaching this point. Countless times he tried and failed to make it this far in the competition. And now his king was telling him to throw the match? The king could see how much his words had affected the knight. Still he continued. "I have a few knights disguised as commoners, and they will be placing bets for you to lose. If you throw the match, we will make so much gold. You'll be the richest knight in the realm." King Oswin paused. His words had not changed Sir Conrad's expression, so he changed his approach. "The gold we could win will put our kingdom far ahead of the others. Think of all the people you could help with your winnings." Sir Conrad was surprised at the king's words. "But that would be dishonest, and kings are not allowed to place bets on the matches." King Oswin spoke with great confidence and pride. "You are right. The 6 kingdoms agreed not to bet on the games, so that our wealth would not be affected by the outcomes. Which is why I will not be placing any bets. The knights will, and no one will ever know that I instructed them to do so." He grinned, proud of his deceitful little plan. But Sir Conrad did not care about the money. He was an honest knight and wanted to keep it that way. Sir Conrad spoke with resolve, but also great fear. His heart pounded as he spoke. "This is not the way knights fight. I'm sorry, my king, but I cannot forsake my pride as a knight in order to make money." He was going against a request from the king. There was no telling what consequences his denial would bring. King Oswin put his hand on Sir Conrad's shoulder. "I know you are an honest knight, and that is one of the things people find inspiring about you. But think again of all the citizens we can help with our winnings. With that much gold, we can provide food and houses for all those in need. We can start new farms, promote trade, and give our citizens a better life. This is not about more money, but the betterment of our people." The king tried to sound sincere, but he did not plan on using the gold for anyone but himself. He had been using all the kingdom's finances to fund his lavish celebrations and had very little left. However, his words tempted Sir Conrad, who started imagining all the houses and farms they could create with their winnings. He still felt uncertain, though, that money could go very far in providing a better life for the citizens, but he still wanted to be an honorable knight. He felt it was an unfit option. Throwing the match would bring dishonor onto both him and the king. It was also against the rules for the kings to bet on the matches. He knew that if any of the other kingdoms found out, the repercussions would be far greater than the kingdom could bear. The king stood up and started walking out of the tent. His royal guards held the tent flaps open as he turned around and said, "You have a little bit before the match. I know you will make the correct decision." Then he left Sir Conrad standing in his tent, contemplating how to proceed. Sir Conrad walked over and sat on the bed. He felt so conflicted. The king's orders were absolute. He should follow them since he was a knight of the kingdom. And he also wanted to help create a better life for the citizens. The money could go so far in the kingdom, but was it worth it? The potential guilt and dishonesty weighed heavily on Sir Conrad. Up to this point, he had lived a very honest life. His father was a knight and raised Conrad in the way of a knight. He was taught that honor is the most important trait of a knight. He could hear his father's words. "We train with swords to protect the kingdom, but our greatest weapon is our integrity." Sir Conrad sat in silence, pondering for what felt like hours. The tent flaps opened, surprising Sir Conrad, and two squires walked in. They gave each other concerned looks, seeing Sir Conrad on the bed distraught. The tent was filled with an uncomfortable stillness, a strange sense of anxiety and stress, but also a feeling of emptiness. One of them stepped forward and broke the silence, saying, "Sir Conrad, it is time to get ready for your match." There was no response. The squire's voice echoed through Sir Conrad's head, getting lost in the void of his mind. Without thinking, he stood up and allowed the squires to help him with his armor. They worked quickly, feeling uncomfortable in the anxiety of the tent. It caused their hands to tremble as they worked. Within a few minutes, Sir Conrad was suited up and led out to his horse. The squires hoped that leaving the tent would take away their anxious feelings, but it did nothing. The anxiety came from Sir Conrad. Even though he put on a brave face when they left the tent, it still surrounded him. Sir Conrad sat high on his horse, mind still racing, trying to figure out what to do. They rode past the tents for the other knights, most of whom were walking to the arena without their armor. Sir Conrad tried to look confident and strong as they passed the other knights. He did not want them to see how distraught he felt. He was led right to the outside of the arena where Sir Reginald sat waiting. Large banners separated the knights' entrance from that of the commoners. Sir Reginald glanced over as Sir Conrad rode up. He sat up higher on his horse, lifted his head, pointed his nose to the sky. Sir Reginald was surprised by Sir Conrad's lack of reaction. No words, no sounds, not even a hint of facial expression. What intense focus, Sir Reginald thought. As Sir Conrad sat on his horse preparing to enter the arena, he needed to make a decision. His country needed him. They were mostly poor farmers just scraping by, and he could help change that. He could bring a new sense of life to the kingdom. The winnings could brighten the future for the next generations. But all the knights would probably know he threw the match. They have seen him joust before and knew what he was capable of. They would no longer look up to him for his strength and valor. He would no longer be a role model for how knights should behave. Instead, they would ridicule him. Unless there was a way to make it believable. Sir Conrad quickly thought up multiple scenarios to make everyone believe he lost fairly. He could pretend he got an injury. He could accidentally slip up while jousting. These thoughts were interrupted by the sounds of horns coming from inside the arena. Everyone grew quiet as Queen Leonard rose to spoke. "We have had many great matches today. Many great knights have ridden hard to try and make it to this final match, but only two could make it. Please welcome Sir Reginald and Sir Conrad." The crowd erupted, and Sir Reginald rode in, raising his lance up high as he went around the arena. He stopped at each section, making his horse rear up in front of the crowd and bringing more cheers from the people. He knew that winning would be difficult and wanted to enjoy his moment in the spotlight as much as possible. Sir Conrad rode in with his lance high as well, feeling confident in his decision. He would trick them all to believe he was injured and so lose the last match. That way, the other knights would not ridicule him, and he would be following the king's orders. As he slowly rode around the arena, each section cheered louder than the last. He looked up to his king, standing high above the rest. They both gave a simple nod. That nod was all the communication they needed. He made his decision and was ready to make his injury believable. Sir Conrad took his place at one end of the arena and waved at a young boy who was staring at him with a huge grin. The boy was overjoyed that a big knight noticed him. He was young, 8 at most, and his clothes were covered in holes. Sir Conrad thought that these are the type of people he could help after throwing the match. The boy quickly turned to his mom with overflowing excitement and said, "When I grow up, I'll be a knight who's honorable and true just like him." Sir Conrad just barely heard what the boy said, and it rocked him. He had just spent the last hour racking his brain for an answer he could accept. He finally came to a decision that he thought would help his people, but the boy's words rang in his ears. Honorable and true? Is that what I'm being right now? What about the other boys like this one in the crowd who see me as a role model? Sir Conrad took a quick look around the arena and saw many young boys glued to the match. Their attention could not be taken away from this joust. Sir Conrad looked at all of them, and many started waving when they noticed his gaze. Looking at them, he couldn't help but see the great knights they could become, and felt that throwing the match would put a strain on the noble profession they dreamed of. He looked back to King Oswin, sitting with the other kings in the nearby lands. King Leonard continued addressing the crowd, but Sir Conrad heard none of it. He was too focused on the debate with himself. He watched King Oswin sit there with a mischievous smile. He thought to himself, did he mean what he said? Will he actually help the citizens? In the midst of his thought, King Leonard finished talking and sat back down. On that cue, the squires for both Sir Conrad and Sir Reginald came out holding the knights' helmets, shields, and lances. They handed the knights their helmets, each one sliding his head inside. Then Conrad and Reginald grabbed their shields and lances and nudged their horses into position. They were ready to joust. From his chair, King Leonard waved for the match to begin. Both of the knights rode at each other, bringing their lances down, primed to strike. Sir Reginald's form was firm and unwavering, aimed right at Sir Conrad's chest. Sir Conrad, on the other hand, did not have a firm grip on his lance. His tip bounced around, unable to find its target. They met in the middle, and Sir Reginald's lance clipped the edge of Sir Conrad's shield. With that hit, Sir Conrad was almost knocked off his horse. A mix of cheering and gasping came from the crowd. Many were shocked at how Sir Conrad almost lost on the first run. Both riders took their spots at the end of the arena and rode at each other again. Sir Reginald maintained his form from the last one, keeping the tip pointed at Sir Conrad's chest. Sir Conrad needed to make a decision. His confusion made his hands shake and his lance unsteady. He knew that if he did not commit to the decision, he would definitely lose, whether he meant to or not. As he stared down his opponent, it felt like the world slowed, until it felt like it was barely moving. The horses' hooves made no sound as they gracefully pounded the ground. The crowd watched intently, seeming to be frozen in place. No cheers or sound came, only an arena full of eyes that peered deeply into Sir Conrad. He felt like they could see his inward struggle and were judging him for it. He saw the young boy from earlier. He was sitting at the edge of his seat, hands sandwiched together, silently praying. He looked worried and concerned his hero would lose. Sir Conrad knew that he had to win for this boy. He could not let him down. Sir Conrad slowed his breathing and looked forward again. He let his thoughts drift away, solely focusing on his opponent. He fixed his lance into position. The tip no longer wavered. It had found its target and would not miss. Time started moving again. The horse's legs moved faster and faster. He could hear the hooves along with the crowd again. The two knights collided in the middle of the arena. But this time, Sir Conrad slipped his lance around Sir Reginald's shield and forced him off his horse. Sir Reginald went flying, the wind knocked out of him. King Oswin's mouth hung wide, not believing what he just saw. All the money he invested in this match was now gone. His greedy dreams crushed. Sir Conrad held his lance high in victory. He rode around the arena looking for the boy from earlier. When he found him, they locked eyes. The boy was teary-eyed and looked to the sky as if thanking the heavens for answering his prayers. Sir Conrad gave the boy a huge smile and lifted his lance as high as he could. He was a knight of integrity, and he would pass that into the next generation. Thank you for listening to Voice of Adventure. Make sure to keep up with the adventures by following the Voice of Adventure on Spotify. If you wish for extra adventuring content, follow me on Instagram at Josiah the Author. See you in the next story.